Hi there. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Crystal Wittevrongle, collaborating with Common Sense Edmonton, here today with Darrell Friesen, who is running for Edmonton City Council in Ward sipiwiyiniwak in the October 2025 elections. Darrell, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Hey, you're welcome. Thank you for having me. I totally appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, I would love to hear more about you. What do you bring to City Hall in this race?
Oh, a little bit of common sense. No, you know what I'll do is I'll start at the beginning, and that might lead to even more questions along the way. So I was born and raised on a grain farm in Swan River, Manitoba, and that's where I spent the first number of years. So it's a mixed grain and livestock farm, and you learn a lot about determination, hard work, and responsibility being on a farm. From there, I ended up in Vancouver, where I had some post-secondary and started in the label and packaging industry. And where I'm getting to with your question is, after selling boxes, stretch wrap, shrink wrap, and printing supplies into that industry, I got transferred up to Edmonton in 1992 with my job, which was fantastic. My standard of living improved tremendously, being a young guy going from Vancouver, where it was super expensive, to Edmonton, where there was a lot more disposable income, which was fantastic. But I had a chance to start my business, which was Jet Label and Packaging, in 1998. And which was one of I think, my single most fortunate, or a miracle, that I got a chance to do that and start that business and then grow it all the way through until 2019, when I sold it. I did stay on after I sold the business for another 4.5 years. One of the reasons why I stayed on too was just to make sure all the employees had a really good, smooth transition. And I managed all of the Canadian aspects for that company. So I had 600 and some odd employees reporting to me at the time. And then we resold the business again. And I was finally finished in 2024. Where I'm coming from, you probably asked, what do I offer? What's different? Hopefully some business acumen. The city isn't a business. It is an organization that's here to serve the people. However, I think we can use a lot of business acumen when we're dealing with different situations and problems the city has.
Mm-hmm.
And in small business, or in business, you always think of profit, right? People talk about profit. That is the gauge of a business. Wow, right? How much profit? Are you profitable? How much profit did you make? So when you look at the city, probably public good, right? So I think of public good the same way. If I have a chance to be counselor, what can I generate for public good? And that would have, to me, the same equivalent as profit moving forward. How did I do on your question?
That was great. That was really great. And so when you're in your ward and you're talking to people at their doors, or even just in the community, what
Yeah.
are you hearing are some of the big priorities in this election?
Oh, well, you know what? My ward is a bit unique. So it stretches from Parkview all the way down to the uplands, kind of along the river, along the north side of the river. Number 1, 2, and 3 in a good portion of my ward is infill. So they're very, very concerned about infill in mature special neighborhoods. So you see the infill coming in, and I'm sure you've driven by it, where it's a large 8-plex, no parking required. Typically, they've scraped the entire lot of all the trees and everything else, and it's put up in sort of a haphazard fashion, and it doesn't fit the neighborhood. And you can see that, right? It's in the middle of a really nice established neighborhood. That is the number one concern I'm hearing at the doors, by a long shot. Number 2, I would say, it would be the construction chaos. And again, I'm speaking just from my ward in the West End. Trying to get from the West End to downtown is exceedingly difficult. Not only did they start one project, they started like 4 all at the same time, which has been really tricky. Still, we have almost 90% of all of our commuters use their car, right? And so trying to get around, and especially now that school is on, and also all the after school activities, it's very, very busy for sure. And then I would say a tie for third place is between 2. And that is, the first one is around, I'd characterize it as safety, but probably even more social disorder and cleanliness. So when we live in a clean city, we feel better about ourselves. And you've been to cities around the world that are nice and clean, and you wake up in the morning, you go, oh, this is pretty good, right? You feel better about yourself. And once you hit that standard, it's easier to maintain that standard. Social disorder is also a big one because people want to feel comfortable. You want to feel comfortable on the LRT. You want to feel comfortable walking downtown and even around West Edmonton Mall. So social disorder definitely is high in the list. The other tie for third place is tax or value for taxes.
Yes.
The tax dollar. Our tax, residential and commercial, has gotten to the point where it has become, or our city council has gotten drunk on funding their social and environmental projects through tax increases. It's very easy. Oh, wow, we need to spend more money on project X, which might be a nice romantic project. How do we fund it? Oh, you know what, 8%, 9%, it really doesn't matter. It does matter because we're competing with other communities. We're competing with other cities. And not only will we see investment in commercial leave, we'll also see residential begin to slip out of the city. We're beginning to see it. If you look at the communities in Beaumont, in Sherwood Park, Spruce Grove, they are gaining and growing at a much more rapid rate than in Edmonton. And part of it is our tax structure.
Yeah, definitely. Taxes are overwhelmingly what I hear about when I'm speaking with residents. And it also, the spending, when you mentioned it was, spending on maybe other priorities that aren't, crucial to municipal government. And so, in your view, what is the role of municipal government?
So I'm going to take a little bit of a left turn here on you. I look at city council like a board of directors, and a board of directors that is responsible for a $4.5 billion organization. So that has carries a lot of weight with it. There's not a lot of organizations that are of that size in Northern Alberta, for sure. There's only a couple that do that amount of money. So it's important that when you think of city council, you're electing someone to be in charge, and you trust them with the keys to this $4.5 billion organization. So when I look at it from that 25,000 foot level, a board of directors, if it's functioning really well, number one priority, hire and fire the CEO. We don't even have a CEO here in Edmonton, right? We have a city manager, which is maybe probably a reason why the city isn't functioning that well either. Why don't we have a C-suite? Like I've always asked the question, why don't we have a COO? Why don't we have a CFO? Where's the CEO? Well, how about the chief technology officer, HR officer? All businesses that are run well have that. And now a number of cities that are run well have that. And I'll use Melbourne, Australia as an example. So I've been there. It is a beautiful city, punches well above its weight in attracting events, attracting investment. It is a 3-season city, not a 4-season, so it doesn't get nearly as cold as we do, absolutely. But if you look at the cleanliness, if you look at the social disorder, the opportunity, the investment, the multiculturalism. Now, what makes Melbourne different? Well, they have a proper C-suite. They have a proper organization running the city. So I think when you look at something that is working well, why don't we copy it? Right? Why do we have to think that, oh, we've always done it this way for the last 60 years where we have a singular city manager and guys, this is the best idea? Maybe it isn't, right? And that could be something like for us as a board of directors, do we need to rethink the management structure of the city? How can we be more efficient? And how can we get our information passed down through administration? How do we improve the culture? How do we improve the communication? So that's sort of that first part, that CEO, that's the most important job of a board of directors. Really what a board does, if it's really well functioning, though they spend 80% of their time on strategy, 20% of their time on accountability, meaning 80% of the time looking out of the windshield going forward. So how can we help assist the COO, the CFO, the CEO, the top leaders in the city with looking out the front windshield and talking about strategy? What does it look like if immigration increases? What does it look like if it decreases? Where should the density go? Tell me about why you're putting it in this area, and what other services do we need, and what do we think transportation is going to look like 30 years from now? I'm sure it's going to be different than it is today. Then the last 20% I look at from an accountability side. So this is where a board of directors gets the opportunity to say, hi, like, are we on track? Or are we off track with this project? If we're off track, tell me what we need to do to get back on track. How much is it going to cost? How long is it going to take? What are the steps required to get back on track? And that way, we're asking those open-ended questions, and they're good quality questions, and keeping it at that 25,000 foot level. I've been to a number of city council meetings where they spend 90 minutes voting on and debating the agenda, in which items go first on the agenda. And you look at this incredible waste of time. So this is a board of directors that meets for a finite amount of time every year of a $4.5 billion organization. And they just spent 90 minutes battling over which agenda item should go first. I couldn't imagine, if you work back the amount of money, how much that time cost. It's just lost. And I think that's one of the things that we don't fully recognize, how valuable our time is.
Absolutely.
That was probably way too long. Sorry, Crystal.
No. This is great. It's great. Listening to you talk about the C-suite got me thinking, though, like, if you're creating a new suite of positions, that sounds expensive, and we're talking about it in the context of a city that already has a spending problem. So how would you see that playing out if you're, recommending something like that, but spending is already an issue?
Sure. Absolutely. And you know what? I think it is, right? And very, very good quality help is absolutely expensive. I come back to, why do all successful businesses that are profit, and from a business side, we'll call that profit. And then from the city side, we'll call it public good. So to create profit, why, like, if you look at large businesses, and I was involved, Promoc, they're the company that bought us. When they bought us in 2019, they were a $2 billion a year company. I stayed on with them for additional 4.5 years after they purchased us in 2019. Had the opportunity again to share in that upside, looked after the Canadian operations, and they had a C-suite. And ended up, when we sold the business again in 2024, it ended up being sold for $5.9 billion. So it was a large sale. So you look at it, why did they have a C-suite? So they had a C-suite so they could properly manage the business. And right now, what we're doing, I look at the analogy that we are tripping over dollar bills to pick up dimes. So we're looking at, we can save $200,000 on a position, or we can save $500,000 on a senior leadership position. Yet it's a $4.5 billion company. So we're so worried about these small little dimes, nickels, and pennies on the floor, we're tripping over dollar bills, or better yet, $20 bills, as we're looking for that. With the proper management, they would pay for themselves many times over. You look at someone even like Calgary. Calgary is going to be heading down the path of developing a proper C-suite. It's just how to run an organization. And most organizations, I'm sure that even with your investments, if we look at that, you go on any fund on the stock market, go on any company on the stock market, and they will have a proper C-suite set up to be able to manage the organization or manage the business. What we're talking about is sort of my 4-year goal. If I could put the stamp on one thing to move Edmonton forward, that would ultimately have a lifelong or a lasting impression forever, this would be the one thing.
And so how do you see property taxes factoring in? Like, do you see them needing to be increased over time? Not just for this, but just kind of overall.
Sure. Absolutely. No, great question. And that's it. You're right. We have two choices. We can either raise property taxes or sell assets. Right? So those are the two choices that we have inside of our budget. So we have been taxed. Our taxes now are almost double Calgary. Right? So, if we look at it from an efficiency side, that means we're not running the city very efficiently if we're already double what Calgary is, because they are similar in size, similar in climate. There's not a lot of differences between the two, probably just how it's being run or managed. So then we go back to that. We know we're here. We have got a long way to go. Everyone is fed up and they want to at least have a holiday on property tax, and I agree with them. So let's talk about the other hand, and that is selling assets. What do we have that is valuable that we can potentially sell?
Mm-hmm.
Blatchford Field comes to mind, right? As this huge pink elephant that's right in the middle of the city. And the beauty is you could sell off 40-acre super pads to a number of developers. It would solve the housing shortage, or the alleged or perceived housing shortage, for many, many years to come. It would put density in the right place. If you look at all the services around that area, from commercial property, light industrial, we have a freeway, we have an LRT that runs right through Blatchford, we have healthcare services, and we have a ton of other support services that are in that area. Totally makes sense, right? That's an easy one. One of the other things, I think even developers, they would prefer to partner with us, and continuing partnering with us. We get so fixated on communities being residential only, right? Why don't we put some commercial in those communities, right? That'll help pay for some of the weekend levy, and that'll help pay for some of the roads and other things that we need to do with the developers along the way. So from an asset standpoint, we own a tremendous amount of land and we own a tremendous amount of buildings. We can be very strategic at beginning to sell off. That will help make up that difference while we're changing our culture and our management structure, so we don't have to continue raising taxes.
And so what about spending? Would you kind of scale that down, like on some of the other things
Yeah.
that maybe the city doesn't need to be doing?
So I look at it this way. I think we have a lot of romantic projects that we've spent money on. If you think about Europe, right? And you go to Europe, romantic, right? Cities look romantic. You spend time in Paris and Amsterdam. You see bikes, you see transit, you see a lot of romantic looking things. I think we've also spent money on social and environmental projects, right? Without really thinking about, is this a core service? Number one, let's identify our core services, right? Making sure that we understand what is really important to Edmontonians: safety and police, fire, right? EMS. And then you go through some of the transportation, things to do with roads, garbage, waste, all of those items for sure. And then you look at the wants. So those are needs. And even in my business over the years, I would have loved to bought all the new printing presses. I would have loved to bought all the new technology, the new gear. I couldn't. I could buy maybe one at a time, one a year, maybe 2 a year is max. And so I have a list of wants. And then what I do, I narrow it down to what is left in the budget. What is the one thing that can make the biggest difference as we're going forward? And I think we can support a lot of that with data also. We have to look at what is being used, and then how is it being used? And when we look at things, even as simple as bike lanes and bike trails are being used all the time. I use them myself in the River Valley. I'm sure you do also. Bike lanes are not being used as much, and we see that from the data. So which bike lanes are being used? Let's make sure we continue to use those and support those. If a bike lane is not being used, why don't we convert that inventory back to traffic? Make it easier for someone to drive their car and park their car, get around the city, make it more efficient. One of the things the city never realizes is how much time are we spending sitting in a car, wasted time in traffic. Now, that's just me as a resident. Now, I have my repair shop, trucks and everything else. I'll go back in time 5 or 6 years ago. So I'd have 6 or 7 technicians running around the city and, oh yeah, I'm late for this appointment. Oh, I can't make this appointment. Why? Oh, we're stuck in traffic. And if we can make it more efficient to get around the city, our businesses will be more efficient and more profitable.
Well, and another way of easing some of the traffic is with LRTs or public transit. And so we've seen ridership just take a nosedive and really take a hit in recent years. And a lot of people are scared to take transit. Public perception of crime and disorder really have an impact. What are your thoughts around that? What would you do differently?
Yeah, you look at transit, and we've had more than we ever had. Like, we have more availability than we've ever had before with demand and
Mm-hmm.
so on, yet the numbers are going down, right? Proportionally. If you look overall at the data, yeah, it has gone up a little bit, absolutely. But if you look at all the new people that have come in proportionally, so why is it that everyone refuses to use our transit? And what happens, Crystal, we go to New York. Oh, the subway was great. We got around fantastic. Or we go somewhere to Europe, right? We're in Venice, or we're in Milano or Roma, and oh, we were able to get around on transit and the train, and it was so awesome. A few things, and I think it starts here, and that is social disorder and cleanliness, zero
Mm-hmm.
tolerance. You go into a train station in Europe, it's clean. There is no social disorder whatsoever, not allowed, not in the station. Then, if you go a little farther, you look on the train. And typically on the train, what happens is you have cops, and they go up and down and they make sure that there's no social disorder on the train. And I'll speak from experience here, being in Venice lots. So coming back from Venice, and you go on this little train to Mestre, and this is after a soccer game. So you can imagine all the ultras are out, all the hooligans are out. So there is a police present for sure, but it's calm, they're active, you can see them, but they're still it's still clean, and there's no social disorder. Those are the two critical things. The other part is, I think we missed the boat a little bit with the peace officer versus police officer. You look at a peace officer, they don't intervene, they report. A
Mm-hmm.
police officer intervenes. And I think that is a key differentiator. The peace officers report up to transit. Clearly, it's not working, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is transit better than it was 3 years ago? Or are you using transit? And so probably the question comes down to, when I have two daughters, they're 18 and 21. When was the last time I would drop them off at the mall and have them take the bus downtown and then take the LRT to the Elks game? Or they took the transit from the university over to the Oilers game. It just doesn't happen. They say, why? Well, I feel uncomfortable. Like, girls, you've on your own, you've done the Sky Train in Vancouver a million times. Why do you feel comfortable on the Sky Train in Vancouver by yourselves and not on our train? This is your home
Mm-hmm.
city. Cleanliness, social disorder. We are what we tolerate. When we tolerate things to be dirty, that sets up a bit of an attitude, and then that
Mm-hmm.
creates a social disorder that is in and around the station. We have to stop tolerating it. Once that happens, you'll see people ride it 100%.
And so how do we get there though? Like what sort of policy solution is there to managing that?
Yeah. So two things. I think, and I touched on it briefly. I think the how we're doing transit right now, or how we're the security, doesn't work.
Mm.
So the comment I always got: police officers are way too expensive. Much better to get a peace officer than a police officer. The peace officers report up to transit, right? So the police officers are way more expensive. I would much rather have 3 cops than 6 transit peace officers, because the 3 cops can actually do something and they command some authority. All the bad guys and the people causing the social disorder, they know the peace officers are going to do nothing.
Mm.
That's why they can get away with it. So specifically, you're asking LRT, 2 cops riding down on the LRT to the terminus station at the very end, right all the way down to the very south. So it used to be Heritage, but now it goes past. And then right at the end, they sweep the entire train. They walk from the very front car to the very last car. At the last station, everyone should be getting off. There should be nobody left on the train, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then people can get on. And at the same time, you can begin to check tickets. So I think it is, as people that are causing social disorder, causing crime, making people feel uncomfortable, as they begin to feel heat, and as they see police around them and they become very noticeable, then they're going to move somewhere else. It'll be easier for them to do business somewhere else and
Mm-hmm.
cause social disorder in other places. So I think that is really key. having the police back on the LRT, then it starts with that, because this is our big talking point, right, in the city when it comes to transit. It's unsafe. No one wants to ride because they don't feel comfortable, and it's not clean. Getting it clean, I think, will be pretty easy. We can figure that out.
Yeah.
Now, how do we make sure people feel comfortable? And that is making sure that from your very first experience, your transit experience doesn't start when you get on the train. It starts when you walk down the steps, or either up the steps into the transit station. That's when your experience begins. So the train can be super clean. You can have cops all over the place inside the train, but if the station is an absolute disaster, and if there's people inside of the station, outside, on the steps, again, that is when your experience starts with transit. So,
Yeah.
I hope
Definitely.
that answered your question a little bit there. I didn't provide as many details as probably you would like, and I'm sure I need to ask some better questions to even refine my stance on it. But when I look at differences between the cities, the places that I love to go to, the places where transit works incredibly well, and then you look what's happening here in Edmonton, we're just a couple of notches away. We just need to adjust the dial and adjust what we tolerate.
Yeah, definitely. And one of the things with the densification discussion is also attached in with the transit safety. But let's talk about densification. You did say that it was, the number one,
In my
or
ward,
the infill
sure.
development is the number
Infill.
one issue.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what does that look like for your ward?
Sure. So I'll describe my ward. Starts in Parkview in the very northeast, Laurier Heights, and then sort of wraps down into Rio Terrace and Quesnel Heights, Pad Heights, Westridge, and so on. I have been to, let me see, 7 restrictive covenant meetings with all the neighborhoods in my area. So you can tell it's high on everyone's list. And the one restrictive covenant meeting was so oversubscribed to at a community level, I was outside listening to it because you couldn't get into the hall. It's a really, really big deal. And what happened is the city painted, or city council painted the entire city with one brush, which I don't think is correct. I think it should be looked like districts. There are areas of the city that need density badly. Look at, Blatchford Field. I'll go back to that. And then you look at the old Northland site and all the land that'll become available. Look at the West 240. Even if you look at downtown, we need 8 plexes, 16 plexes, 32, 64 plexes. We badly, badly need that in those areas. And they have all the services to help for that. Where it gets tricky for me is when you put that in the middle of Parkview, or you put that in the middle of Laurier, right? It just does not fit. And I know for myself, I live in Westridge. I would be very upset if an 8-plex came in next door with no parking, right? The land value would go down significantly, right? And my biggest investment, my house, right? And land value would go down significantly, and it would begin to change the neighborhood. I also have some and then I'll come back to the why. So why has this happened over the last year and a half? What has happened? Well, the zoning bylaw changed, absolutely. But what really added a lot of fuel to the fire was the MLI Select program, which uses the CMHC mortgage insurance for 50-year amortization. So typically under conventional, financing, usually a developer or a landlord will start hitting some home runs, maybe year 15, year 16. It takes a while on a 25-year amortization. On a 50-year amortization with preferred interest rates, the developer hits a home run year 1. And with 95%, up to 95% funded and secured through CMHC, right? You can go ahead and you can get a loan from almost anywhere. And then you can pack some of your management fees into there. So the initial person building that 8-plex, he's just fine. He's doing well. And then what you're seeing now, you're seeing them flip it. You're seeing them right away flip it, move it, sell it. So they're trying to get it leased, and they don't care even what they lease it for. They want to flip it as soon as they possibly can. Now what happens? The next person comes in, hopefully makes a go of it, but he's competing with many, many other developments that also provide parking. He doesn't have parking. So that means his rental rates will come down. So it's going to be very tricky for him to make money. Now, if me or you are the landlord and we own that building, what do? We shift from a long-term rental, long-term lease to short-term lease, because that'll be the easiest way for us to make money. So what I see coming down the road, when you do the math on these 8-plexes, 12-plexes, it's not the long-term rentals that will be in there. It'll be very short-term, Airbnb and many other challenging things that come up. So it's more than just having, hey, there's a rental property in my neighborhood. What does it look like 5 years from now? What does it look like even 10 years from now? Absolutely should not be in these neighborhoods, 100%. So when people ask me, what is right to you? What's the number? Right? The number, it's very easy. 2 to 4 units, depending on lot size, parking required, mature tree, and architectural guideline, right? So that's a very common sense approach to it. So why the number 4 is really important. To apply for that MLI Select program, it needs to be 5 units or more. So I'm not so wound up about the 2 or 4. We have to know what slows down the people who are coming in and being predators and taking advantage of the system and not really caring about the neighborhoods. That's the number we need to make sure that we're focused on. So the results are what matter. And then if you go one step further, and then I'll let you, sorry about this.
No.
I just want to finish this last thought off. And that is, we have roughly about 130 units of these multi-unit, no parking complexes, right, in the city, roughly about 130 of them. And now there's a number more being built, right? You see them popping up. I've seen some in Mill Woods. I've seen some different ones popping up around the city. And so you see them coming in. Of the 130-ish, we'll use that number because it might be 135 today instead of 130. I have it under very good advice that about 128 to 129 of them did have the MLI Select financing. So really, of all of these multi-unit developments, if only 1 or 2 applied for traditional financing, that tells you something right there. Okay, there is something wrong with how we're zoning this and then how we're allowing this to carry on, right? This is only carrying on through a Ponzi scheme, which really is what it ends up becoming. Once the initial developer sells it, then you sell it and you flip it again.
And so, pardon me, I know that the residents of Edmonton have reported that they just felt like they weren't listened to or heard about anything when they're talking about this infill development. And so in City Council, what would you do to change the way that residents are heard or consulted on things like this?
Yeah, I don't know, Crystal, were you at the public hearing?
I wasn't.
June. Oh, geez. It was. So I went to them because it's number one question in my ward. I've not been to one door ever. Yeah, I've been to a ton of doors. So I've been to thousands and thousands of doors where they say, you know what, this 8-plex thing with no parking, this is a fantastic idea. And you know what? We need to put it right in the middle of these residential neighborhoods that's far away from commercial and transit. No one has ever said that at all. So in the public hearings, they had it at the end of June and it leaked into July. And I was sitting there with Reed Clark. Reed is running just north of me in Crestwood. And I looked over at Reed and I said, Reed, if we get a chance to serve, I want to make sure these poor people feel like guests. It was very uncomfortable. So I sat there on and off for about 5 days. And how City Council someone would be speaking, okay, better yet, they wouldn't even get the order right of who to come up and who to speak because they'd be fighting over the agenda for 90 minutes. Then finally, once they get the agenda and everyone has sat through the first 90 minutes to get up to speak, you would see councillors, first off, there were a number of them missing. And then the ones that were there at times would get up right in the middle of someone's 5-minute presentation that they would have put their heart and soul into, prepared an exceptionally long time, and probably is their most important day of the year. And they get up and they leave. They go to the bathroom, they go for a coffee. And it was I was like, I don't know if I felt disgust, anger, frustration, sadness. And you could see, in fact, I remember this one lawyer's name, his name was Joe Spellacy. He was sitting there doing his presentation, incredibly well done presentation, like top notch. After listening to his 5 minutes, it'd be like, yeah, no more eightplexes. This totally makes sense. We're no longer doing this. Two counselors in the middle of his presentation got up and walked out to do whatever. And that is not how you treat a guest, right? First off, if I get a chance to serve, we are here, right? You elected us. You're the one who put us in this position. If on public hearings, we need to treat everyone coming in there as our guest and make sure that we totally understand and listen to every single person who comes in and has something to say, right? We want to make sure that everybody understands the rules, but when they do come in, they have our full attention. And better yet, we don't make people wait a whole day wondering when they're going to talk. Are they going to talk? Right? There was a number of people in front of me waiting to talk that one day that got bumped. So they were there at 9 a.m. They got bumped, got bumped again, ended up maybe in the evening, and then they had to come back the next day. These are people who are taking time off of work.
Yeah.
It's just, we don't treat people that way.
Yeah, exactly.
It was shame on everyone in council. Like everyone there should have felt, right, if the councillors that are running again in this election don't get reelected, right? You wonder why. It might be karma.
Yeah, there's definitely some common themes I'm hearing in these interviews of, people not feeling heard and a lack of transparency and accountability.
Yeah.
And that leads me kind of to another thing I want to quickly chat with you about is about the policing and the dysfunction or seeming dysfunction that has come up in recent years between the police commission, the Edmonton Police Service, and City Council. A lot of people feel very uncertain about how to navigate within that. And the province is even saying that they have to kind of step in or might need to step in. What are your thoughts on that, and how do we move forward from that and build trust back?
Sure. So I have limited knowledge in this area. So I'll relay the knowledge that I've gained to the best of my ability here. So we'll start at the top and work our way down. Police Commission. There are 8 people on the Police Commission. 4 people are appointed by the province. 4 people are appointed by the city. Generally, it's 2 city councillors and 2 other people from the city, and then 4 people from the province. And then the 4 people that they appoint from the province, I'm not sure on the criteria or how they find them or who gets appointed. Again, I'm unsure. I just know that's sort of the ratio. So I went to a presentation from the EPS about 3 weeks ago. So just before Warren got in now as the new chief. And Devin and Warren were giving the presentation, right? They were the co-chief of police, or they were the 2 deputies who were serving chief of police. They were alternating every other month. And they were presenting to a number of us candidates and a few other people from the general public, but mainly it was to the candidates. They had a beautiful package, talked about the police, where they are today. They had a lot of stats. What are we doing about crime? How much has it been reduced? What's a major crime versus a minor offense, and so on. And then they had financials, right? So then we started. So I had a chance to sort of look through the financials on the way down, and they were talking about, hey, we're getting less funding per capita than we did 8 years ago from the city. The city's grown in size, yet police have not kept up with the same level of spending. In fact, their budget is getting cut a little bit. And I think, okay, well, that's interesting. And then we started talking a little bit more about budget. And the comment came out, and this was from, I think it was from Devin, could have been from Warren, one of those 2. They were up talking, and they said, well, the police commission has hired, I'm going to say Ernst & Young, but it could be KPMG, I'm not sure, one of those 2, one of the big firms, to come in and assist the police commission in understanding financial statements.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had two questions out of this. Number one question, my God, how did it take 3.5 years to figure out no one could read a balance sheet on the entire police commission? So 3.5 years later, we realize that they don't know what they're doing. So what have we been doing for the last 3.5 years? Number two, when we appoint someone to these positions, isn't there criteria?
Mm-hmm.
Right? If you look at the police commission, you should have a lawyer on the commission. You should have a CA or CPA, an accountant, right? You should have a business guy. You should probably have someone from the medical community on there, right? And you should make sure you have those 8 seats filled out with all different skill sets.
Mm-hmm.
And now when I hear that no one can read a balance sheet on the police commission, I know we're broken. That to me summed it up right there, that I am giving the city way too much benefit of the doubt that they know what they're doing when they're putting people and they're appointing people to positions, because they couldn't get one of the largest spends. They couldn't figure that out.
Mm-hmm.
And that goes back to a bit of an issue too that we're having with the province. And with the province, we have to work with the province. They're our partner. This is not a zero-sum game. The city is a child of the province. The Municipal Government Affairs Act controls the city. And we have to make sure that we're working with the province. So when it comes to appoint those 4 members of the police commission, we can say, oh yeah, by the way, did we get our CPA or our CA taken care of? Do we have our lawyer taken care of? Do we have our doctor taken care of? Do we have our social worker or a non-for-profit person taken care of? Do we have our business guy taken care of? Do we have all of these groups taken care of along the way? Those very basic questions are not getting asked. Mm-hmm. So that leads us to a competence question on the current city council.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's definitely, working with the province has been an issue in many ways for many cities. And we definitely need to find a way to do better, for the citizens and residents of our cities. But that brings me kind of to my final thought, which is that this is an interesting election because every election is very interesting, but this one is the first time we're seeing municipal parties at the municipal level. And so do you have any affiliations? What do you think about this?
For sure, I do. Yeah, thanks for the question. No, I was waiting. I knew that you were going to get here, even though the questions, you told me nothing ahead of time. I knew. So I'm part of Better Edmonton. You can see behind me. So Better Edmonton is a slate, and it was started roughly a year ago. And in fact, it dissolves on October 21st. So people always ask me, tell me about Better Edmonton. I say it's a slate, dissolves on October 21st. And from there, my priority is this ward. My priority still is this ward, right? The sipiwiyiniwak. So why did I join a slate? That's a question I always get. Hey, why did you join the slate? And I said, well, there's probably 2 reasons I can think of. The first reason is when I was so frustrated with the city, I was tired of complaining. I came home, I filled out my nomination paperwork in the middle of March. April 1st rolls around and I'm starting to get nervous. Like, what have I just done? Right? I'm applying for a new job in a new industry I've never been in before. Right? And really, it's very different. It's a popularity contest, right? During this election period. And then once I get in, I'm pretty confident about the time I've spent on boards, my education around ICD.D, all the other things. I'm pretty confident that I can operate as a really, really good board member or a city council member coming up. But getting in, and I was thinking, how do I shorten the learning curve? I only have, 6 months, and I have to be really good in 6 months. So joining Better Edmonton allowed me to shorten the learning curve. So joining the party or slate, what that did, I had to pay for that privilege, of joining. And in return, what did I get? I got access to software, access to app where I can help not only my volunteers, but also members in our constituency and people that are supporters, being able to submit all of our financial statements to Elections Edmonton from the software side. Got some signage and literature, absolutely, which was great. And then what was really important, I received some mentorship, advice, coaching, all of those things kind of wrapped up into one from Better Edmonton, which was really key. When do you order your signs? How do you order your signs? When do they go out? What does this look like? When, right? How do you volunteer? What is door knocking? How do you door knock? What is effective? What isn't? So all that consulting work was important, and we paid for it. Mm-hmm. The second reason, which is really important and sometimes is missed, we are incredibly dysfunctional down at City Hall right now, right? There were 13, including the mayor, there were 13 people who had their very own, very independent agenda. Mm-hmm. And you can see how far that got us. Not very far at all. So one of the cool things about Better Edmonton is there's 12 other people that are running for city council. Tim is running for mayor. And I agree with 80% of the stuff that we hold collectively, right? Mm-hmm. We have very similar thoughts around safety, social disorder, and cleanliness. We have very similar thoughts around construction, around how to do it. We have very similar thoughts around taxes. So meaning we agree on 80% of the items already. Just imagine if you have a city council that comes in with a majority of Better Edmonton candidates, and it comes in on day one where we already know each other. We've gone out for dinner a number of times, right? We've had appetizers and beers and wine together a number of times. We know each other well. Mm-hmm. This is not a get to know you, right? We don't have to worry about trying to politic each other and, hey, if you vote for my little special interest over here, I'll vote for yours over here. It's none of that. It would be spent at a very high level, focused on the issues. Mm-hmm. And with that 80%, just imagine how we could move the city forward, operating as a team from day one. It would definitely... It would be at a new pace, and I think really welcomed. Even if you look at, I talked to a number of city employees. They just want to just give us some leadership, give us some direction. Let us know what is next. Right now, there's no communication, there's no leadership, there's no direction. And as a result, it's a big safety meeting where everyone's sitting on their hands, right? No one moves, no one gets hurt. That's sort of the mantra around that safety meeting. And we need people to, okay, let's try something. Let's take a risk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Well, Darrell, thank you so very much for taking the time today and sharing your perspectives. Crystal. And if you're going to leave one thing with our viewers who may or may not be in your ward, what would you want to leave with them today?
Oh, you know what? I'm very grateful for everyone else that's running, right? Because even in my ward, there's a number of us running that are frustrated, and we just want to make the city better. Mm-hmm. What I would leave with you is we live in the greatest city, in the greatest province, in the greatest country in the world. Sometimes we don't act like it. We need to start acting like it, right? And sometimes we have to remind ourselves of it. And what I want to do is be part of the people or part of that team that reminds us and also proves it to everyone again that this is the greatest city in the greatest province and the greatest country in the world.
Wonderful. Well, Darrell, thank you again. And thank you to our viewers as well. And just a reminder, stay informed, get engaged, and get out and vote. This is a very important election for the city. And we need to see votes coming in, especially at a higher rate than in 2021, for instance. But thank you, Darrell, once again. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Yeah, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.